People tend to believe that few years down the line, people will stop buying traditional TV setups at all.
A lot of the younger folks sort of buying a TV are actually picking up our projectors because they feel it's a lot more convenient.
So you guys mentioned a slow TV epidemic. It sounds like a public health issue altogether.
It stutters a lot, it's clunky and it's laggy. A lot of customers have just got used to the fact that, that's how it is supposed to be.
So Lumio says that we are India's fastest Google TV.
We actually commissioned a third-party study where our TV could be compared with about 100 plus best-selling TVs out in the market. So they've done that study and they've given us a report where we're about roughly about 2 times faster than most TVs that are available in the market.
Somebody walk into a store or maybe they're going through Amazon. How would you convince or what reason would you give a person to choose your brand? Why would they choose a brand like Lumio?
Frustrations that 75% of the customers who bought our TV have clearly called out that your TV claims a better performance. We compared it with an Apple TV and said this is actually as fast as an Apple TV. Close to 50% of our customers previously had a Sony, Samsung and an LG in their homes and they've upgraded to Lumio.
Take a time machine to 10 years from now. How do you want people to see Lumio? Hey everyone, welcome back to Matt Podcast. I'm your host and today we have a guest who I've been genuinely excited to sit down with for a while. Most founders start from zero. This one started from knowing more about the Indian consumer electronics market than almost anyone alive. Raghu Reddy spent 6 years at Xiaomi India, helped build it into the #1 smartphone and smart TV brand in the country, managed a business doing over $5 billion in revenue, and then walked away from all of it to start again from scratch. In 2024, he co-founded Circuit House Technologies and launched Lumio, a premium consumer electronics brand built around one big bet, that the Indian consumer is done setting for slow, laggy, frustrating TVs and is ready to pay for something that actually works in the way it should. In less than a year, Lumio crossed $1 million in sales, launched Projectors, won Breakthrough TV Brand of the Year at Amazon's Best in Tech Awards, and found its way onto Swiggy Instamart right before IPL season. Today, we are going deep on the story behind all of that. We are talking about what it actually takes to build a hardware brand in India, why performance is starting to beat legacy, brand loyalty, who the Lumio customers really is, and where this whole category is heading next. Whether you are into consumer tech, startups, or just curious about what it takes to take on Sony and Samsung with a 1-year-old brand, this conversation is going to be worth your time. Raghu, welcome to the Mac Podcast.
Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you for having me on the show.
So, starting off, when we look at your work history and we see that you worked at Xiaomi and had a big brand like that, where you were tackling probably hundreds of people and you were managing around $5 billion of business, right? People try and think to just and climb the corporate ladder, but yet again, rather not even going there or going to places where you're writing checks as a VC, you rather chose a place like starting your own startup in this brutal consumer tech field, and you started off Lumio. Why was that exactly?
It's a bit of a mad call, right? Yeah. No, I think, all journeys, I think startup journeys tend to be like that. But I think 3 big reasons for me to sort of jump into this and start something of my own. I think the first and foremost thing is what I realized over a 12-year period is the stuff that gives me the most joy is actually figuring out, how technology is evolving, how customers are evolving in terms of their, usage, their requirements overall, and see how do you land some of these products even before customers know that they want something like that. I think landing those kind of products and getting them to scale is something that's given me the greatest joy and greatest satisfaction over the last few years. So I said, I want to continue doing that, and I want to continue doing that with a bunch of like-minded folks. So we sort of put together a bunch of, like-minded folks who are all tech nerds, who are all trying to figure out, technology that can spark joy. And we said, okay, let's do this together. Of course, there's also a bit of a, how do I put it, a masochist in you, which asks you, what's the hardest thing that you've not tried. And I think, doing a startup is, I think, infinitely more harder than being in a job. And we said, okay, why not take a shot at it and see if you can, make it work overall.
True that. But yet again, it's a very risky call looking at a saturated market like that. Did you ever feel that before starting?
Not really. I think, all all industries, all segments, whether it's consumer electronics or anything else, I think, things keep evolving. And I think, if you're a, astute entrepreneur, you will figure out pockets of opportunity. Even though, to the world, everything looks similar. You might say that, it's very stagnant, saturated, etc. But I think the entrepreneur in me sees opportunity, pockets of opportunity, and which is where we are, focusing on.
That. In fact, now that you're talking about opportunities, looking at the inception of Lumio, you guys mentioned a slow TV epidemic, and that's where this all originated from. So, what does, because this doesn't sound like a problem, but it has like, it sounds like a public health issue altogether when you make it sound like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe yeah, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it definitely is a problem. When we sat down and we figured, we want to work on, building out a consumer electronics brand, we were obviously looking at a lot of different categories. But obviously, the first and foremost point is, other categories where there is a glaring problem that is unaddressed by most of the brands out there. So we went across a lot of different categories, but we zeroed in on TVs because when we analyzed, about 50,000 odd customer reviews on e-commerce platforms between 23 and 24, we realized that most people are happy with their TVs for their display, for its audio, for the value for money, for brand, etc. But we saw that about 15 to 20% of the people were still very unhappy with the experience that they had on their TV in terms of the usage. They just felt that it's very frustrating, it stutters a lot, it's clunky and it's laggy. So that's a problem that we noticed was consistent across brands, consistent across price points. It's not that it is a problem only for cheaper TVs and it is not a problem at the higher end. It is a problem in as much, it was a problem in a 1 lakh TV as much as it was a problem in a 10,000 rupee TV as well. So we felt that, okay, that's a problem that seemingly no one has solved for. And then we went around, speaking to a lot more customers just to understand if that's actually true or not. Again, where it came out is that, it's a latent problem. A lot of customers uh, have just got used to the fact that, that's how it is supposed to be. But they made peace with it. And but if you prod them and say, compared to your TV or a laptop, is it still a problem? Yeah, like, of course it is. But somehow I've never gone to thinking about it because I never saw any alternatives out there in the market. So we felt that is a problem. I think most people have felt it. Some people express it, but majority have felt it. And we felt that if we can actually solve for it in a meaningful manner, we will have a lot more people who will start sort of evaluating us because we're solving something that's very, very, I would say basic and sort of necessary. So that's how the journey started for us. Of course, we when we looked at how do we go solve it, we realized that there were a couple of devices that a lot of customers who were facing this problem would end up going and picking it up in, say, some of the Western markets. Either they would pick up an Apple TV or a Nvidia Shield. Nvidia Shield is based on an Android TV, so we felt, can we build an experience that is similar to that of an Nvidia Shield, but that's there on a TV and that's as fast and snappy, not just when you buy it, but even many months, many years after you bought the TV. So that was the goal with which we sort of started Lumio. And I think, it took us almost close to 10, 12 months to get the first product out.
Wow. And how much research did you guys do? And how much time did it take to validate the thought of what came into your minds while, you came with this perception?
No, I think, the validation took, I think, maybe about 2, 3 months of whether this is the right problem to solve for. But the harder part is actually, getting it into, a product that can actually deliver on that promise. That took us a lot of time. I think, our teams ended up spending, like I said, close to between 10 to 12 months to, figure out what is the right product. How do we make that right product happen? Because, there's no TVs in the market that actually claim any of this. So to get it going, it took us almost about 12 months.
Now, stretching it ahead from here, when you say is fastest TV, right? Now, we're talking about claims here. So, Lumio says that we are India's fastest Google TV, which, people would be very curious about. So, how is Lumio able to engineer that? And what are the few parameters by which you can say, yeah, this TV might be the fastest Google
Right.
TV?
See, I think, I think we started from a point of view of, what do we want to build as a product. We felt that, and when we spoke to customers, we figured out, what are the different user interactions that they have on a TV, which which lead to a very frustrating experience. So we listed them down as metrics. It could be, when you switch on the TV for the first time, it is when you switch on, or when you click on the Netflix button or some of the other apps, how long does it take to load? When you're toggling between apps, how long does it take to load? And when you're going into an app and playing a content, is there a lag between you pressing a particular content before it starts showing up in full visual clarity? So a lot of those kind of user interactions, we broke it down, and then we started testing our product, and we tested that against the NVIDIA Shield to see, can we be on par with that or not. And once we were satisfied with that, of course, when we launched the product, we actually commissioned a third party study where our TV could be compared with about 100 plus best selling TVs out in the market across each of these parameters. So they've done that study, and they've given us a report where we're about roughly about 2 times faster than most TVs that are available in the market.
I mean, that's the whole, when you see a vacuum in the industry, maybe you identify it maybe now or a few years down the line. If you are filling the vacuum, you're creating a good business out of it. So I hope the best for Lumio too.
Thank you.
And I have another question. So most of the other brands, they talk about screen sizes, and also these customers, they mostly care about the screen sizes or the prices. And these are the two most important attributes everybody's talking about when they go and buy a TV. But yet again, when it comes to Lumio, you're talking about very precise details. You're talking about the audio, the visual, supporting Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, using QD Mini LED and stuff. But somebody who's sitting on a couch, right, and he wants to experience a good match or a movie, in layman language, in simple terms, how do you explain them that what good or what better experience are they getting through Lumio?
I think, in a very laymanist terms, I think the first and foremost thing is you don't have to wait for apps to load when you're watching the TV. I mean, I think for far too many times, I think people uh, try to get to something to watch, but it takes so much time that they finish their food, etc. So that's something that you can definitely not have to worry about when you're using a Lumio TV. Of course, people buy a TV for a audio visual experience, which means that your visual quality also needs to be top notch. So we've ensured that we've put we put the kind of display that you actually see in flagship TVs onto the Lumio Vision 7 and the Lumio Vision 9, which means that the kind of the color coverage that you end up seeing on the display is going to be far superior to the regular TVs, but it'll be on par with a flagship TV. And finally, from a sound standpoint, we're trying to engineer something that gives people very good sound, which is clear, precise, and you know uh, the clarity of dialogues is there. That's what we've sort of focused on. We've not tried to call out higher wattage, which means that there is a bigger sound output, because frankly we don't think it matters. I think what matters is how well are you able to follow what's being sort of broadcasted or what you're seeing on a TV.
I might check out your TV after this podcast.
That'll be good. Yeah, yeah.
I should. So another important thing that we can talk about is gaming with TVs. So now this was another not so much highlighted segment by the brand, and this requires a lot of attention by every brand, I would say. But when we talk about Lumio, you guys promise a good experience for gamers associated with TVs. So what about it? How are you able to cater to that?
Right. So actually, to be honest, I mean, that was the feedback that we got from our first launches last year. I think most people that we spoke to, most, tech reviewers that used our products, they said, it's great for everyday use. Everyone who wants to use it as a, multimedia device where you watch content, movies, shows, etc. It's a great device, but maybe it's lacking in a few things from a gamer perspective, because we had 60 hertz panels overall. So that's something that we are addressing. I think the key to building a good brand is being able to understand what customers want or don't want from your brand, and being able to act on it consistently. So with the new launch that we are doing this week, which is the Lumio Vision 9, 65-inch, we're actually addressing that concern that gamers have head on. So we are putting together a 144 hertz native panel, which means that they can game in 4K at 144 hertz, or they can game in 1080p at 240 hertz as well.
That's so great that you guys are literally identifying what could be the next chapter for Lumio and filling in. But other than that, another thing that we see with Lumio is that you guys have also come with your own proprietary app named called TLDR. And it was another software layer which no other brand does. And we have this Google TV and Gemini AI baked in it, and we get all the basic stuff. But what was the need that when you went an extra mile with this brand?
So when we zeroed in on that we want to get into TVs as a space or home entertainment as a space, I think the first problem statement, like I said, was the slow TV epidemic. But at the same time, one of the other things that we also realized, which I'm sure when you sit in front of a TV, how long does it take for you to figure out what to watch?
20 minutes.
Yeah, so I think most people end up spending anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes. And that usually is like also a frustrating journey, because sometimes people spend that time and still don't figure out what to watch. And that journey is usually multi-device. I mean, you look at something in the TV, then you go back to the phone, then you check for reviews, then you come back again, figure out where it is running. So it's a slightly painstaking process. So with TLDR, at least the objective for us is how do we make that simpler? How do we take that journey and crunch it from 20, 30, 40 minutes into like a 5-10 minute exercise overall? So that's why we are building out TLD as an app, which is to solve for what to watch and where to watch problems.
And how does it operate exactly?
So today, I mean, our version 1 is focused on building out a dashboard for sports, because I think most TV OS layers, I mean, again, just showcase movies and shows, but sports, if you want to watch, you don't necessarily know where. I mean, of course, everyone knows where the big tournaments are happening, but if there are smaller tournaments, other sports outside of cricket, where it's happening, where are the highlights, where's the score, all of that is generally a challenge. All of that has been engineered to work into one dashboard on TLDR today. So you come in the night, if there's a match going on, you'll have a link to click, and it'll take you to whichever OTT platform is running it live. If the match is over, you want to see highlights, we should be able to see highlights for that match and for a bunch of other sports as well. So that's what we've sort of solved for. But going forward, we believe that movies and shows is also a pain point. We should solve for that. So we are working on integrating AI into the TLDR app, so that the agent does the work on your behalf. What you end up doing, the 20-30 minutes of figuring out a bunch of things, how do we help build out an agent that can do it on your behalf, and then actually get it ready on TV to be watched overall.
That's amazing. Very, very amazing. And other than that, I would also like to get to know a bit more picture about the kind of customer base you guys have. For say, if in one sharp picture we could understand what would like a perfect Lumio customer would look like, what would be their likings, what kind of experience do they like, why would they choose a brand like Lumio? How do you explain that?
Right. So, very pertinent question. I think when we started, we were very clear that we are going after solving this problem of the slow TV epidemic, which meant that someone should have actually experienced it, and felt frustrated before they actually upgrade to a Lumio, or be convinced by our messaging. So, which we knew is a large enough base, because today there are about 60-70 million households with smart TVs or connected TVs, and we know for a fact that all of those guys have gone through that experience. So I think the proof of what's sort of working for us is the fact that when we did a survey, we realized that close to 50% of our customers previously had a Sony, Samsung, and an LG in their homes, and they've upgraded to Lumio because they felt that problem, and they said, no one's solving for it. These guys are claiming. Why don't we try them out and check it out? So, and if I were to extend it a little bit, I think, if you add Xiaomi to the mix, that's about 65% of the customers who come from these very well-known brands who are upgrading to RTBs overall. And then, of course, we went back and asked them, try to understand the demographics. I think unsurprisingly, a lot of our customers are more younger. They're in the age group of 25 to 40. And I think some of these customers are obviously not as fixated on a brand as the older generation. So they're happy to actually try us out as a new brand, as long as we're able to deliver on the promise that we are sort of claiming overall. And then finally, we also checked whether is our hypothesis working? Are they buying the TV for the reasons why we think they're buying, or is it for some other reasons? But luckily, I think again over there, I think the hypothesis has come out so strong that about the slow TV frustrations that 75% of the customers who bought our TV have clearly called out that we bought it because your TV claims a better performance.
Oh, wow. And they deliver.
And they deliver. That's correct. Yeah.
But yet again, now that you mentioned the newer generation, as you just said, the ones who are living in rented urban areas, right? People tend to believe that few years down the line, these people will stop buying traditional TV setups at all. How much do you agree to that narrative?
Oh, yeah, I think, changes are afoot. I think different generations behave very differently with respect to what they're doing. We're actually seeing that in some part play out on the projector side. We feel that a lot of the younger folks, instead of buying a TV, are actually picking up our projectors because they feel it's a lot more convenient. It is not tethered to a specific location. You can carry it from room to room, place to place, city to city. And I think that convenience is what is getting a lot of the Gen Z customers to pick up a projector instead of a TV.
Okay. Now that you brought up projectors in the picture, my question to you is that, mostly, as we can say, this brand is just 12 months old. And, people tend to believe that if you're starting new, you just take one line of product and you get obsessed with it until you're there. And only then you come with a second line of product. So why projectors?
No, you're absolutely bang on. I think you have to be focused on what you're doing. We When we started TVs, we realized that we also saw this shift where younger customers are picking this up instead of a TV. But when we dug a little deeper, we also realized that there's also another problem with the projectors because the market has a lot of players who claim a lot of things but don't necessarily deliver on that. Most importantly, projectors are a great form factor, but the apps don't seem to work in a lot of the projectors like the way they claim. So we said, can we solve it? And does that does that give us a right to exist and a right to sort of win the market? We felt that that was a tick mark across the board, and of course, we also felt that it's actually a common product. It can be either you buy a TV or you buy a projector. So in some sense, it's similar, but not very similar as well. And of course, the TLDR app is also something that's common across both. Both of them are viewing devices. We're solving the same problem across both of these devices.
Wow. And what about the demand? How has that been looking for this brand for the last 12 months?
Oh, it's been good. I think, largely TV as a market, I mean, in volume terms, is not really growing so fast. But again, there are pockets of demand that continue to grow very strongly. So you see bigger screen sizes. That's a market that's growing, starting from 43, 50, 55, 65 and above. And within the bigger screen sizes, you see that the more premium offerings in the form of a QD mini LED or a QLED is growing. So we had zeroed in on some of these segments. So we see that there's tremendous amount of growth in the segments that we are actually playing.
Okay. Now that you mentioning other brands also, I mean, first say somebody walk into a store or maybe they're going through Amazon and they're, a Lumio vision in just adjacent or parallel to other screens. How would you convince or what reason would you give a person to choose your brand?
I think the first and foremost is getting them to check us out. They need to, I mean, they should have felt the problem. And hence, we call out Lumio Vision as India's fastest smart TV. So I think that call out helps customers at least, come and, check us out. And then, I mean, of course, when they go into the details, they go through customer reviews, they go through expert reviews, they realize that we're actually delivering on everything that we are saying.
How are the reviews in Amazon, Dopana?
Oh, they're pretty good. Again, I think a large majority of the people are calling out the fact that the experience is top notch. In fact, just yesterday I read a review where one of the customers actually compared it with an Apple TV and said this is actually as fast as an Apple TV on a TV. So and repeated such comments across the customers about it being fast. I think that just makes us happy that the hypothesis that we started with. We've sort of managed to deliver on that, and then customers are also acknowledging that fact overall.
That's beautiful. And if we go, back a little, we'll see that how the launch of Lumio was there. So it was pretty impressive, like around $1 million in GMV within 2 months, right? And even the whole buzz looks organic. The reviews are great, but still, when we look behind the scenes of everything, there is this moment for a hardware startup company where things fall apart, right? Was there a moment like that for this brand?
Um, I mean, things falling apart is a very strong term, but I mean, you could say that there are obviously challenges along the way, and you just have to keep figuring out, how do you, get over those challenges because not everything is perfect all the time. So we did see, for example, I think when we launched the amount of reviews and the organic demand that came in was fantastic. But I think within a few months, I think after like 2 or 3 months, some of that organic buzz died down. Right now, how do you keep that up? Was a challenge that we had in front of us. So that's something that we try to solve for. One of the other things that we really set ourselves as a target to do is how do we give like a great installation experience within 24 hours of the product getting delivered. So that's something that was not great in the first month, but we scaled it up. We made it better over the next few months. But then we again got into the festive period where we probably faltered a little bit on giving the right kind of an experience. And then we're like, okay, that's a problem. We got to start solving it. How do you improve upon that? So we've done that now. But so you keep coming across challenges across various aspects of your business. It's just about uh, b- having systems in place for you to track that there is a problem and then to track how do you drive improvements across the board.
So now that we're talking about launches itself, so we recently saw that Lumio launched their products on Swiggy Instamart, a 10 minutes grocery app, that too before IPL. So what was the strategy behind this move exactly?
No, I think like I said, the Lumio Arc projectors, I think they give a great home theater, or it just gives a great big screen experience, which I think a lot of customers like for sports, right? So I think the biggest driver for people to actually pick up projectors, even more so than movies and shows, is actually sports, because sports on a big screen is much better because it just allows many more people to come together and watch it. So we've done that just before IPL because we feel that a lot of these customers could also have impulse. I mean, they could have these impulses that they could buy it and want to watch that match just before the match starts, and we're enabling that by our partnership with Swiggy Instamart.
How was the result to this?
It's been good. It's just been about 10 days since we've gone live. I think some cities are obviously picking it up a lot more. Some cities not yet. So, but yeah, I think we are very hopeful that as we go into the season, more and more people will will see the magic that Lumio projectors can bring into your home.
Now that we're talking about the magic here, in fact, Lumio recently got its breakthrough TV brand of the year for Amazon's Best in Tech Awards. How was that for like how did you guys take it? You guys celebrated it, or you went on to the next chapter?
Uh, no, I think these are. I think all of these awards are just validation of the work that's gone in. In the prior 12 to 14 months overall. So we feel happy that whatever we set out to do is meaningful. The world cares about it. So I'd say it's motivation for us to do better as we move forward.
And what about that? When we see that even before you guys had meaningful sales, you already came up with 300 service centers across India. So, what was that kind of thought in your head while you did that, and you felt the need of building that?
No, it's a necessity. I mean, see, once you start selling a product, whether you're a startup or whether you're a 20, 30-year-old company, I think customers, when they pay their hard-earned money to buy your product, they expect great service as well. So we wanted to be ready for that, which meant that there had to be a lot of preparatory work that had to be done. So we started work almost 6 months before that to ensure that we have enough service centers across the entire country that can meet customers requirements as quickly as possible. Of course, does that mean that we've become we are 100% great? No, I think there are still challenges. We will figure out. You have to keep sort of working on it to figure out how do you make that better as you move forward.
But that might have a lot of pushback from investors calling it a premature capital allocation.
Um, not so much. I think these are essential because I think customer trust and customer word of mouth is how brands get created. and we have to ensure that we put in our best foot forward to enable that experience.
Okay. And now coming back to you, you went from a large company like in Xiaomi, where every decision had a operational process to it, and now when you're here where every call is yours, right? There must have been some habits always but you might have compromised or changed about when it comes to your own startup in comparison to a setup like that.
I think, being a large company, there are a lot of things that you take for granted because the sheer number of people who are there across, different functions, they just enable you to go and achieve a lot more out there. I think the first thing that you need to get out of your head is, with limited resources, there are only limited things that you can do. And you should always aim to do those limited things very, very well. That's how win the hearts of customers, or, right. So I think the biggest learning or the biggest change for us is just making sure that we do very few things, whatever our bandwidth, our collective team's bandwidth allows, and do that well. I think, and yeah, that's a thing to take away from the previous roles, because over there, because you have so many teams, you could always say, yeah, we can do 10 things in parallel, but here no.
Okay. Okay. So I have an interesting question for you. You have to finish this sentence in just one line, and that too very honestly. So the real reason most hardware startups in India fail, not because of the product, but because of.
Because I think, not enough awareness, not enough distribution.
Okay. Okay. And that's what the vacuum is being filled by Lumio today.
uh, No, I mean, that's a challenge for most startups. I mean, how do you get it? I mean, even if you get the product right, it's not enough. You got to figure out a way to get a lot of customers to care about you. I think that therein lies the real challenge as well.
That, true that. What about for the first time when you came up with this idea, right? How was that for you? How did this all got executed?
No, like I mentioned, I mean, it took us a fair amount of time. I think, idea is one thing, to convert it into reality. 3-4 months of just figuring out whether that idea is worthwhile to pursue or not, and make up our minds whether this is a meaningful problem to solve or not. That took us 3-4 months. But after that, once we were ready that okay, this is something that we should solve for, uh, figuring out how do you engineer a product that can actually meet that promise, that also has its own ups and downs. But it took us, like I said, about 10-12 months to get that right.
Okay. And what would be the one piece of advice that you would give a consumer hardware founder who's actually getting into it, and you can protect him from certain do's and don'ts in the industry?
No, I think the biggest one again is comes down to priority and how many things you want to handle. I mean, pick that one or two things. Don't run after many things. I think is the one advice that I keep giving myself, and I think it's probably fair advice, fair game for a lot of others out there as well.
Okay. And what is the narrative of a startup that changed for you when you entered and you built it yourself and what you had before?
Uh, it's a lot harder than you think.
As simple as that.
Yeah, yeah.
And what about the next chapter for Lumio? What can we see and expect next with the brand?
We want to evolve in the space. I mean, we've targeted a niche. We want to expand that niche. Get more people to be aware. I mean, I think Lumio, we started it with a simple credo of tech that sparks joy. I think these products are bringing that kind of joy into the usage that they have. So we want to build on that credo. I mean, get more and more products out there that help us solve for something that no one has solved for, make that experience overall better. So, but of course, from a category lens standpoint, we will continue to focus on home entertainment as a space. We've got into these two categories. We will go deeper into the Lumio Vision series, which is the TV series, and then the Lumio Arc series. But we'll try to see if we can add one or two lines of products over the next 2 years.
And if we take a time machine to 10 years from now, how do you want people to see Lumio?
Uh, I think we would love it if people remember us as the brand that brought about a change in how TVs need to be evaluated.
Okay,
Yeah,
maybe we'll be like, that's how a
yeah,
chip TV
yeah.
works.
That inflection point was was sort of started by Lumio.
Wow, great. That's it for today, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tamanna. Thank you for having me over on the show.
The pleasure is all mine, sir. And I'm so glad that how transparently and nicely you answered all our questions. Thank you for coming to the Mad Podcast.
Thank you.
So, guys, that was Raghu Reddy, co founder and CEO of Lumio. And honestly, one of the sharpest people I have spoken to about what building a consumer brand in India actually looks like from the inside. What struck me most was this: he did not just identify a problem that millions of people feel every single day in their living rooms, he left a $5 billion business to go fix it. That is a very different level of conviction. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review. It generally helps more people find these conversations. And do this one thing: share this episode with one person in your life who either works in consumer tech, is building something in hardware, or simply owns a TV that drives them crazy every time they try to open Netflix. Because one conversation really can change how someone thinks. Check out Lumio at lumio.co.in if you want to see what the product actually looks like, and follow Raghu on LinkedIn for a front row seat to what building this category looks like in real time. We will be back next week with another conversation that we think you are going to love. Until then, keep figuring out.